The intensity of the protests seemed to have eclipsed the Masa Amini protests of 2022. This is a fluid and evolving situation, and would like to focus on some key risks at this stage. Will the labor strike spread to Iran's energy sector? A strike at South Pars, where a sustained walkout by the approximately 5,000 contract workers could result in a non-linear collapse of upstream output, i.e., worst-case scenario, 30% of crude production could be curtailed. But initial reports of this strike have not been corroborated by subsequent reporting. There is no clear evidence at this point of a sustained work stoppage or any meaningful disruption to domestic oil and gas supply. While a large-scale labor walkout in Iran's oil or gas sector would have material implications for output, such a scenario has not yet materialized. It is also important to note that much of Iran's energy workforce now operates on a contract basis and is not organized in a manner that facilitates coordinated industrial action. In addition, given the strategic importance of the energy sector, operations remain under close supervision by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which further reduces the likelihood of prolonged labor disruptions. With no remedy for the underlying causes, it is likely the demonstrations will continue, with significant risk that unrest escalates to the point that a more violent crackdown ensues. Could this trigger U.S. intervention, as Trump has indicated he would do? I don't expect Trump to militarily intervene regardless of how the regime quells the riots. Similarly, Israel is most likely activating its assets on the ground to maintain the protests, but will not strike at Iran unless the regime rebuilds its ballistic missile and/or nuke program. But Trump could choose to escalate pressure by targeting Iranian oil tankers, an outcome Tehran has been concerned about since the UN snapback mechanism was triggered in October, which creates legal space for maritime interdictions. However, such a move carries significant risks for D.C. Iran has historically responded to tanker seizures with retaliatory actions, including the detention of commercial vessels, and could escalate further by threatening energy flows through the Strait of Hormuz, putting upward pressure on global crude prices. In the current context, Iranian leadership would likely interpret U.S. tanker seizures as a major provocation, raising the probability of a more forceful and potentially asymmetric response than in previous episodes. While these risks may not deter U.S. action entirely, the prospect of triggering a crude price shock could weigh on Trump's decision-making. Next steps for the regime? A sustained disruption to Iran's oil exports would impose severe financial strain on the regime and could, over time, force greater concessions. In the near term, however, such pressure could also prompt a harsher internal crackdown as the authorities seek to reassert control. The risk of U.S. or Israeli intervention is higher than before, but there is also a meaningful risk that external pressure or direct action leads the regime to close ranks rather than fragment, particularly if it is framed domestically as foreign aggression. It is notable in this regard that widespread protests did not materialize during the June conflict, underscoring the regime's continued capacity to manage internal dissent under external threat.